In this video, we're going to talk about the growing risk posed by the unsafe consumption of external APIs and how Seeker can help us to detect and mitigate it. Why is this a risk that you should care about? Today's developers are, after all, aware of the need to treat user input with caution, validating and sanitizing it before use. They've got great tools and great training to help them do exactly that. But direct user input is really just the front door. Applications are increasingly making use of external APIs. Developers are more likely to trust these external sources of data and not apply the same rigor in validation. That's a gap. There's no point in leaving the house with the front door triple locked and bolted and the back door wide open. At this point, you might be thinking to yourself, Scott, who exactly are you to say this? And I would say, well, it's not just me. OWASP, with their excellent free resources, call this out in their API Security Top 10. Developers tend to trust and not verify the endpoints that interact with external or third-party APIs. I couldn't put it better myself, so I won't. Here's an example data flow map from Seeker. There's a microservices architecture here with untrusted user data arriving via the browser at the top left, that's Chrome and Safari. We're red hot on that, carefully validating and sanitizing it all to make sure we're not exposed to nasty vulnerabilities like command injection, cross-site scripting, and so forth. That's the front door, locked and bolted. But what's this on the top right? It turns out that one of the microservices pulls in data from an external API. In this case, it's a well-known public source of data, the GitHub API. Now, there's nothing malicious about GitHub, but if an attacker can get malicious data onto that external system and the application pulls it down and uses it without careful validation, game over. The entire system is going to get owned through the back door. Let's see how Seeker IaaS can help us to detect and eliminate this risk.
On the right, we have an application being tested. On the left, we have the Seeker user interface showing the data flow map for that application. We can see that the Chrome browser is sending requests to the application under test, and that application in the backend is using a database and, crucially, also an API service providing quotes of the day. Let's keep an eye on any vulnerabilities discovered while we're carrying out quality assurance on our application. So on the right, I'm going to refresh the home page as if I were performing a smoke test. I note that the quote of the day is displayed down the bottom. Now, what I'm wondering is there any kind of cross-site scripting vulnerability here that would then give an attacker control over what's displayed here and allow them to steal all of my users' data or falsify it? The answer, as we can see on the left, is unfortunately yes. So let's take a look at this vulnerability. It's a cross-site scripting. External data is involved, as we can see with this tag here. Let's drill down for more information. It's going to explain to us that this is happening because the response data returned from an outbound call to an external API, which is here, is being used without being sanitized. That makes it potentially dangerous. Now, in the data flow, we can get more details on exactly how this happens. We see that the original request comes from the end user via their browser, and then it hits the application being tested. And if we look at what's happening inside the code, we can see that the first thing it does is it actually consumes data from an external HTTP service on this endpoint. And this data that comes back needs to be treated as unsafe data, and that's how Seeker treats it. From this point, the data is passed around the application from method to method, and it's built up into an HTML response which is sent back to the user. Since there's no kind of sanitization or validation which has happened here, this is a critical cross-site scripting vulnerability.
In summary, Seeker can now help you to detect and mitigate the threat from unsafe usage of external APIs in Java, .NET, and Python applications, as of version 2023.10. This same feature will roll out to other technologies supported by Seeker, such as PHP and Node.js, in upcoming releases. To learn more about interactive application security testing, visit synopsys.com/Seeker.